1 month from today, Marylanders will make their voices heard at the ballot box, and the endorsements keep coming in ahead of the May primary. This week, Angela Alsobrooks earned the support from Chris Murphy for her U.S. Senate campaign. Murphy represents Connecticut, while her challenger, Congressman David Trone, has been endorsed by Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown. Now, Brown served in Congress with Trone before becoming AG. Now, for some time, Trone and Alsobrooks were the lone names making noise in that Senate race. Then enters former Governor Larry Hogan. After flirting with the run for president, he set his sights on that seat held by Cardin, Senator Cardin. And recent polling shows that he is a formidable opponent. A Goucher College poll shows Hogan wielding the highest favorability among potential U.S. Senate candidates, leading both Trone and Alsobrooks by double digits. This poll also looked at potential November matchups. 44% of voters said that they would back Hogan, while 40% sided with Alsobrooks. That margin narrows when Hogan is pitted against Congressman Trone, with Hogan at 43 and Trone at 42%. Now, Hogan says it was a call from former President George Bush asking him to consider a Senate run that got him thinking. Hogan joined us on a stop during his campaign tour, and I asked him about that call and his voice in an evolving GOP.
I think I'm pretty different from where the party is today, and that's pretty obvious. And I've been standing up and speaking out for a long time, and it's a different perspective. But I think the Republican Party's got to get back to its roots, to get back to a party with a more positive, hopeful message and vision for America. And I want to see the two parties working together. What I'm really fed up with, and it's in both parties, is the kind of the loudest and angriest voices get all the attention. There's nothing but screaming and yelling at each other and calling each other names, and nothing ever gets done. I'm a guy who likes to get things done, and so and was able to do it with a 70% Democratic legislature just down the road from Washington. So I think that's the kind of voice that's missing from the debate, and I'm hoping that I can have. I don't have a magic wand. I can't fix everything by myself, and it actually, frankly, doesn't sound like a lot of fun to be down there in the middle of all that.
Sure.
But
So
I felt like I needed to step up. My wife summed it up perfectly. I was going through this decision making. It was not something I was planning on or focused on. I didn't really need a job. I didn't need a title. And my wife said, it's probably better for us if you don't run. But she said, it's not just about us. She goes, it's about what kind of future are we going to leave our kids and grandkids. And she said, if you really feel like you can make a difference and you don't step up, then how are you going to feel? Sure. And I was like, I wouldn't feel too good. So she was actually the closer that convinced me.
You and I talk about civility every time. Every time you and I have an interview together, that almost is like the first question we talk about. So why can't it? Why hasn't it changed at this point?
Jason, it's what not only you and I talk about, but it's what most people want to see. I call it the frustrated majority of Americans. Like 70% of the people can't stand the divisiveness. You can passionately debate the issues and you can disagree and be on one side or the other. You can be a Republican or a Democrat. But most people want to see people work together. They want straight talk more than political rhetoric. And they want people to try to find a way to come up with common sense, bipartisan solutions and just compromise. They don't want the kind of complete dysfunction.
Do you feel the lean on the party from Donald Trump? Do you feel like that's circulating throughout the Capitol?
Well, there's no question about it. There are a lot of people that have just caved completely and taken the knee, but I've never been one of them. I'm a guy who's always willing to stand up and say exactly what I think. If I agree, I'm going to say I agree. Yeah. I agree with that policy. And if I don't, I'm going to be not afraid to speak out, which is what I think is missing sometimes in the debate today, where people are afraid to say what they really think.
Days before this interview, a vehicle delivering humanitarian aid was struck by Israeli forces. Hogan weighed in on how the U.S. should proceed in its relationship with Israel.
The whole thing is a humanitarian nightmare, not just the recent deaths of the folks from the World Kitchen, but nobody wants to see the suffering continue and go on. I think we have to be careful about, we can't forget about the horrific, attacks. It was just terrible on October 7th. Yeah. And Israel is a democracy that has a right to defend itself. And I think going after Hamas is one thing. I think we do have to be careful about trying to limit some of the casualties out there. And I think Israel's a huge ally of ours. And I think we've got to stand by them. But obviously nobody wants to see this thing continue. And I think the easy solution is to release the hostages and then we can stand down and get this thing done. I think we kind of get some of the Hamas terrorist leaders to turn themselves in, and then instead of using people as human shields, and we can limit the suffering and death.
We also talked about the collapse of the Key Bridge, and he praised the transparency of the Unified Command and Governor Wes Moore. Recently, President Biden pledged federal dollars to pay for the entire rebuild. I asked Hogan about the lawmakers from other states who believe they should not help foot the bill. There are some lawmakers who think perhaps we shouldn't pay for Maryland's problem.
Well, you know, I've already pushed back pretty strongly against them. There are a couple of folks in the House, in the Freedom Caucus, that have said, why should we pay for Baltimore's bridge? Well, it's not just Baltimore's problem. It's not just Maryland's problem. This is a huge, important thing for the country, the supply chain. We about 2/3 of the country gets service from the Port of Baltimore. You know, we don't get our ships in and out of there. Everybody's going to be paying for it. So, I mean, in a crisis like this, when this happens anywhere in the country, we come together and do it. And so I push back on those handful of some of the loudest, angriest voices I was talking about earlier.
The red line hasn't gone away. If the governor came to you and says, listen, I need some support on this from our delegations, is something that you've rethought? Is something that you think could possibly, if we could tie that line to jobs or tie it to schools or to economic stability, would that be something you would like?
If it actually made a difference. So
Okay.
in 2014, when I ran for governor, I promised not to do the red line because it didn't make any economic sense. It was the least utilized, currently the least utilized transit system in America. A Washington Post editorial board said it never made any transportation or economic sense. You know, O'Malley didn't build it for 8 years, and he was the former mayor of Baltimore. And then they criticized me for not doing what I promised not to do. I don't think it still makes any sense if it really was going to make a difference. But I'm really concerned that Governor Moore just cut every single transportation project in the state, eliminated $3.3 billion in funding to try to do the red line. It's about half the people in Baltimore want the red line, about half don't. And the rest of the state doesn't. So about 95% of the people in the state are opposed to the red line. And we can't kill every transportation project just to try to do a thing that most experts say isn't going to help.
And lastly, we touched on recent polling in the race for Senate, showing him leading his Democratic rivals.
You know, Jason, I think the only poll that matters is the one that takes place in November. I am running like I'm 20 points down, just like 2014. I'm not taking anything for granted. You know, I'm 33 stops in 3 days. I'm not sitting back, saying, hey, look at the polls. But look, I'm an underdog. Maryland has not. I'm only the second Republican re-elected governor in the whole 246-year history of the state. And this is a presidential year with a candidate on top that is going to lose by 30 points. It's hard. So I'm an underdog. I don't care what the poll says, but I think I'm going to go out there and try to convince people that I'll be the same guy that I was for 8 years.